Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, and oh boy have I got a game for you. This is a classic, and it's not, I know we've been doing a lot of Kickstarter stuff recently, so I'm very excited to get to Food Chain Magnate. This is a game that I've loved for a long time, and so I'm very excited to share the rules with you. Food Chain Magnate is a heavy Euro strategy game for 2 to 5 players, and it takes 2 to 4 hours to complete. And that's because in the game we're going to be playing food entrepreneurs, and we're going to be building companies and then taking actions based on the staff within our companies to sell goods and manage an economy. Now, if all of those words got you excited, then great. And if not, stick with it because this game is not like your typical Euro. It's got a lot of player interaction, a lot of opportunity to stab your friends in the back, and it presents a really interesting puzzle. As you would expect from a game that is about business and capitalism and making the most money, Food Chain Magnate is a vicious game that presents plenty of opportunity to usurp your opponents, nullify their turns, and take away what is rightfully yours, which is the money of the citizens of the town in which we are building our fast food chains. So, if you are the kind of player that does not seek player interaction but prefers to build your own little engine, then perhaps this is not the game for you. But if you're the kind of player that revels in stealing away from your opponents with clever plays and managing economic stuff and also action selection, then this is a game that you will be very interested in. So let's have a look at the components in the box. As you would expect, we've got the standard rulebook, but we won't need that. The game comes in both German and English. These are fast food style menus, but actually what they're showing you are all of the different options you'll have as you play through the game. They're player aids. But these are just going to summarize the rules that I'm going to be teaching you over the course of this video. We've got lots and lots of cards. Starting cards, the CEO, that's you. Reserve cards, these are used to determine the game length, and I'll explain those during setup. We've got a bunch of money. This game is all about who can make the most money. We've got hamburgers. We've got lemonade, we've got pizza, we've got beer, we've got Coca-Cola. These are the goods that we're going to be selling to the kind people of this town in order to make the most money. We've also got restaurants. Now, these are just little bags, player bags that I've put together, but I'll show you what's in those a bit later during setup. Every player will need one of these restaurant chains in order to play. We've got here advertising campaigns. We're going to need to advertise the products we're going to sell in order to generate demand. Does that sound exciting? It sure is. These are houses. We can actually develop the real estate industry in the town in order to attract more people in order to sell them our goods. All right, here I've got city blocks. These are the starting tiles that are going to make up the city in which we play. I have here milestones. Milestones are crucially important to your strategy. More on them later. We've also got here staff. The staff are really, really important. These staff are going to run your business for you because God knows we don't want to have to do it. More staff. Then I've got here a turn order tracker. Now the rest of these components are from Board Game Geek and we're going to use them in our playthrough tomorrow. But I've got a handy player aid here with all the milestones on it. And I've got a concertina that allows me to set up my cards more easily because when you see me set them up today, you're going to go, wow, this consumes a lot of table space, and you're going to be right. There aren't a lot of differences between the 2 and the 5 player version of this game, but I will mention the differences as we go along. It's pretty much limited to the size of the board and to the amount of money that's available in the bank before the game ends. You see, ultimately we are trying to get the most money, and we'll set up a bank with a reserve, and once the entire bank and reserve are depleted, i.e. all the players have earned that money, this will trigger the game end, and at the end of the game, the player with the most money is, of course, the winner, because that's how you win in business. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up the board, and I'm going to start by laying out all of these employees. Now, the employees are going to form a critical part of the game. The game is essentially formed of 7 phases in turns, and the turns will continue to rotate. The phases have some simultaneous turns and some turns that take place in turn order, which is tracked by this little turn tracker here. But don't worry, it's actually really quite simple when you see it demonstrated. So I'm going to set out the staff now because getting to know the staff in the company is very, very important, and there's a very specific layout to this as well. So here we go. Now you can see a handy little chart here which is going to tell us how much of different kinds of things we're going to use based on the number of players in the game. Some employees are very rare and hard to hire, which is, a real business thing. So there's not going to be very many of them available, and if other players hire them, then you will be unable to hire them yourself. However, employees must be paid, and if you're unable to pay them, you must fire them. So it may be that some employees who were hired are then available again later. We're also going to take out some marketing campaigns because some towns are too small to warrant large marketing campaigns. Then we're going to set up the map size, and the map size is going to change based on the number of players available. Now I've laid out all of the available staff within the game. This is the recommended layout, although actually they suggest that you put these ones below that ones to create this sort of grid, which you can see mimicked in the player aids. However, as you can see, it consumes a lot of table space. This is why I have the concertina from Board Game Geek, because this is not very practical. However, don't worry. There are solutions. You can keep them in a stack. After all, like I said, we've got this player aid. Look! And the player aid shows us this exact layout right here in front of us. Some of these staff are incredibly high qualified. For example, the HR director is very, very qualified. So we'll only be putting one of her in our 3-player game. If it was a 4-player game, we'd use 2, and in a 5-player game, we would use all 3. Any staff that can be hired with this one-time symbol here in the corner, you only put out based on the number of players you've got. So I'm going to only be using 1 in this 3-player game, and you would only use 1 in the 2-player game as well. The reason for laying out the cards in this way is because here's where we take a little departure from realism. We cannot directly hire the most qualified people on the board. In fact, we have to hire people at entry-level positions, which means we can hire a waitress, a management trainee, anywhere on the far left here and here can be hired directly, whereas everybody to the right of that must be trained up from the entry-level positions. So, for example, the kitchen trainee here can be trained to become a burger cook or a pizza cook, who can then be trained to become a burger chef or pizza chef. Now, we'll look at the corporate structure when we get to that phase of the gameplay explanation, but these black cards here represent management staff. And these cards are used to build your corporate structure, and they have a number of staff members underneath them that can be played in order to give you actions. So you'll need these guys in order to use the rest of the staff available within your company. And these guys also offer opportunities to be trained up into other members of staff with much more variety than the others. For example, if we take a look at the management trainee here, which is an entry-level position, he can become a junior vice president, a luxuries manager, or a new business developer. That's important because you would think the pricing manager here would get to be the luxuries manager, but she's not. As you can see, she has no potential training options. Even though the luxuries manager matches her in color, that's because they perform a similar function within the company. However, a luxuries manager must be trained up from a management trainee, which is what this indicates down here. Similarly, you can see here, a waitress has no career path at all. Keeping your eye on these elements is really, really important as you progress through the game, and you need to expand your company in order to perform more actions. The higher up the staff members in the company are, the more productive they are as well. However, if you're training beyond entry-level positions, then you're going to have to start paying salaries. So if you have too many highly qualified people in the company, you won't be able to pay them all, and then you'll have to start firing people. But don't worry about that too much yet. The other thing is that the salary doesn't actually change, which is crazy, I know, because you'd think that as people became more qualified and did more work in the company, we would pay them more, but that's just not what we do here. So instead, what happens is that once you start training them up into higher level positions, it's better to train them all the way up to the top, because you'll still be paying your executive vice president the same amount as your junior vice president. But of course, if you put all that time into training them, it means that you're taking time away from things like marketing and cooking food. There's another deck of cards here. These are milestones, and milestones are incredibly important to developing your strategy. These are actually crucial to being a successful fast food chain magnate. So, if there's one in particular that you need for your strategy, you gotta make sure you get it. So let's have a look at these milestones. Now, here you can see the milestones available in the game. There are 18 of them, and the way milestones work is that it's always first to achieve something. However, it's first to achieve something on a given turn, and what that means crucially is that if two players achieve the same thing on a given turn, and it doesn't really matter which player achieves it first, i.e. if someone does it first in the turn order, and then another player does it second in the turn order, they both achieve the milestone. But after that turn, the milestone is no longer available, so any player that didn't achieve it has missed out on their opportunity to do so. Crucially important. I cannot stress enough how important these milestones are. They are really, really, really important. And if you fail to get any milestones, you are not going to be able to win this game. So let's have a look at a few examples. We have some very basic milestones here, like first burger produced. Now, the first burger produced just means that you get to have a burger cook. And you'll just take this and add it to your company. The cool thing about a burger cook is that they have to normally be trained up, so you're missing out on a training step, and that saves you time. However, the bad side is that they require a salary, so you're going to have to start paying them salary, like, immediately. So, unless you are financially prepared to have a burger cook, this milestone may actually turn out to be in your detriment. But it can let you get an early lead, as you can now produce 3 burgers instead of just 1 burger from your kitchen trainee. So make sure that you plan wisely. This game is all about depth of strategy. So you've got to be thinking about your strategy and what things benefit you at all times. This is ruthless business. Ruthless business. This one is really, really strong, and this is just first waitress played. Now, the waitress is often the first staff member that people buy in the game, and that's because they just get you some money straight up. You get $3 cash. This is also the tiebreaker about who's going to go to what restaurant, but we'll talk about that later. The point is that if you play a waitress in your corporate structure, you'll just get some money, which is great because we all need money. And this means that all your waitresses are more profitable, which is great because more money is how we win this game. $2 also seems like a lot at the start of the game, so getting this early can be hugely important. However, by the end of the game, $5 is basically nothing. Another cool one is that if you've made food and haven't sold it, you will be the first one to throw it away. This gives you a freezer that can store up to 10 items of food or drink on it, which means you have now invented fridge technology, giving you a technological advantage over your opponents. You can store food that you haven't used to sell in later rounds. A very powerful ability that the other players will not have, giving you an advantage. Another great one, and this I think demonstrates just how powerful milestones are. If you are the first to train a staff member up to one of the next levels, then you will get $15 discount on salaries. Now, everyone's paid a salary of $5. So what this means is that you can have 3 staff members that require a salary which you don't even have to pay. So if you go ahead and hire this junior vice president to expand your company, he requires a salary, but you don't have to pay it. You can have 3 people that you just don't have to pay. Now that is really important, and by the end of the game, that's going to have stacked up to a huge saving. So that's really good. So this milestone rewards you for placing the first billboard. Here we've got an advertising guy, and this advertising guy is very basic. He can place a billboard. As we train up our advertising men along the track here, we can get up to people like the brand director who can start doing radio campaigns. Now that is super duper powerful. But the thing is, there is a max duration for these radio advertisements before we have to reset our advertising campaign. Not so if you're the first person to place a billboard campaign. Not only can you skip paying a salary on your marketing people, so you can have a free marketing team. I mean, that sounds great for your business. You can also have eternal marketing campaigns. That means marketing campaigns that last forever. The downside to this, though, is it means that you are looped into advertising that product forever, and your opponents can benefit from that later on. We will discuss marketing, though, when we get to the rules of the game itself. Now, if you are the first person to sell a drink, then you will get $5 extra for every drink you sell. That's massive! That is huge! Every drink is worth $5 more? Good God! We cannot let our opponents get this card. So as you can see, milestones are crucially important. They are so powerful and really affect your strategy. If you have got free salaries for staff members, then you can go ahead and grab 3 really strong staff early on and maybe even pit your opponents to those staff members that come in limited quantities on the track here. However, if you get the first drink marketed campaign, then that means that you can sell all of your drinks at a higher price. So maybe you're not going to have a fast food chain restaurant in the conventional sense, selling burgers and pizza. Maybe you're going to focus and double down on lemonade, pizza, and cola. So now that we've talked a bit about these cards and what they do, let's have a look at setting up the board and getting ready for play. I'm going to shove these in my concertina because I don't have enough room to teach you the game on this table with all of these cards out. Now, this is my concertina here from Board Game Geek. This is one solution to this problem, but maybe you have a giant table and it's not a problem for you. That's fine. I just wanted to quickly point out I am not sponsored or paid in any way by this product. It is just a useful gaming tool, which is why I'm showing it to you. Now that I've got my cards all set up and everything, I've got my employee cards set up, I'm going to get out some billboards and I'm going to set up my map. Now, I'm setting up a 3-player game, which means my map is going to be a 3x4, but if I had a 2-player game, it'd be 3x3. For 4 players, 4x4, and for 5 players, 5x5. And in the 3-player game, I will remove billboard number 15 and 16. In a 4-player game, just 16. And in a 5-player game, I wouldn't remove any. In a 2-player game, I'd also take out billboard number 12. Now note, this is just billboards that are removed and not other kinds of marketing. So let's do that now. Here we've got all the billboards in the game. Now, there's little numbers here. These are really important, but we don't need to talk about that for now. However, in my 3-player game, I'm taking out billboard 15 and 16. So there's billboard 16, and there's billboard 15, little tiles. There's billboard 12. This is the other one we would remove if we were playing in a 2-player game. So I'll also take out 15 and 16 because I don't need these numbers. So these are just removed for my 3-player game. Remember, in a 4-player game, we'd only take out 16, and in a 5-player game, we wouldn't take out any at all. The rest of these are all going to be used in the game for our ad campaigns, so we'll put them somewhere useful that we can reach them for play later on. Now I'm going to set up my town. So in my 3-player game, it's a 4x3 board. So let's get those town tiles and get that set up. Woo, here they are. Yes, bags for days. I am a board gamer after all. So here are my town tiles. Now these are going to be set up at random. So we'll give them a shuffle, and they should be oriented randomly as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, a road to nowhere. That's upsetting. So when you're looking at this board and admiring the beautiful art, now we can get rid of these tiles, we won't need them for the rest of the game. You will, of course, be thinking, what a gorgeous town. But there are a few things that you do need to be looking out for, and those things are the locations of these houses. Those are very, very important because those are the people that are going to be buying our products and having, they need to be able to access our restaurants in order to do that. We're going to be building restaurants on this board. We also want to be paying attention to the roads and to the drinks, because we're going to need to be driving along the roads to purchase drinks. What these represent are, these are representing retailers that sell drinks, and we need to be able to purchase drinks from them. As we upgrade our drinks people from cart operators to truck drivers to Zeppelin pilots, we will be able to purchase more drinks more easily. If we want to get more than 1 drink per round, we'll need a cart operator. And the cart operator, of course, has to drive on roads and past shops in order to buy drinks. So that's something to consider. Now, the other thing to consider is how far people want to go. For example, if I am the Santa Maria Pizzeria, I will get this little bag. Now, we'll talk a bit more about what these components mean in a minute, but when I'm thinking about where to put my restaurant down on this board, I'm going to be thinking about where the entrance to my restaurant is and what it's touching. For example, if I put my restaurant here, then people are going to have to drive to my restaurant. These 2 people are incredibly close by and can visit my restaurant very easily. These 4 can't even get to my restaurant because they're going to leave their house, they're going to drive around on this road, and they can't access it because it's over there. That's going to be a problem for them. So if I'm going to build my restaurant over here, now everybody's got access to it via roads, except for these 2. So do I want to corner this market by developing this area over here with my business, or do I want to go over here maximizing my options, but also putting me in direct conflict with anyone else that builds by these people? Now, this is really important because when these people decide where to eat, they're going to be considering, do we sell what they want to buy? How much does it cost? And how far away is it? Those three factors are going to determine where people go to eat, and where we put our restaurants down is going to be very important. Now, I don't fully expect you to be able to make an informed decision at this point in the rules explanation, but hopefully by the end of this video, you'll see a town like this and you'll know exactly where to build your business to maximize your profit. So now that we've done this, what we're going to have to do is put some money in the bank. Let's get out the money. So the amount of money in the bank is going to determine the length of the game. And some players who develop really long-term strategies might want the game to go on longer. Whereas some players who are playing the short-term game, a quick cash and grab, are going to want the game to be shorter if they're looking at short-term strategies. So keeping an eye on the amount of money in the bank is really, really important. Things are going to escalate pretty quickly as your business develops. So we start off by putting $50 in the bank for each player. That's $150 in a 3-player game, but it'll be anywhere from $100 to $250 based on your player count. Now, obviously you should do it in sensible denominations. We will add more money to the bank later on, but I'll explain that in due course. In the meantime, you don't need the rest of that. The bank is set. Now everybody gets to pick a restaurant. There are 5 restaurants in the game, so let's have a look at them. There is no asymmetrical gameplay in Food Chain Magnate. Well, there is as we develop our companies to be different, but at the start of the game we are all the exact same, which means that it doesn't actually matter which restaurant you have beyond aesthetics. So every player will get 1 player turn token. This is going to go down on that all-important player turn tracker. So if you remember, we'll need this in a minute anyway, so I might as well get it out now, but this just goes down here to mark your position in the turn order. Then we've got our restaurants here. Now, each restaurant has a coming soon and a constructed side. This is for later on. If you want to move your restaurant or construct a new restaurant, it'll have to have a period under which it is being developed before it opens. Unless, of course, you've got a really, really good developer, and then you don't have to have the coming soon development period. You can just cut straight to open. So this is the Santa Maria Pizzeria. Now, you'll also notice on these restaurant tiles, there is a black arrow in the corner. Now this represents the entrance to the restaurant. This is key when you're putting it on the board because this needs to touch roads in order for people to get into the restaurant. If you set up the entrance to the restaurant in such a way that it doesn't touch any roads, nobody can get into your restaurant and you are in real trouble. We've also got Fried Geese and Donkey Restaurant, Gluttony Incorporated Burgers. You know, if you're planning on building a burger joint, that's a good one. But don't be alarmed. Just because you're Gluttony Incorporated Burgers doesn't mean you can't be completely misleading and be a pizza place instead. It's up to you what you want to sell. We've also got Zango Blues Bar. Fortunately, no bonuses for playing smooth jazz. And finally, the Golden Duck Diner. We don't actually serve duck here, but it's just a clever name. So each player will be assigned one of these chains. So in this 3-player game, I'll just take away the Santa Maria Pizzeria and the Gluttony Incorporated Burgers, because who wants to be those guys when you can be the Blues Bar, the Golden Duck Diner, Fried Donkey and stuff. So now that we've got our 3 restaurants for our 3 players, we'll have to randomly determine the turn order. You can do this in any way you want. You can schwazi, you can roll a dice, you can shake your hands and just drop one and see what comes out first. It's entirely up to you, but the turn order should be completely random. And once the starting turn order has been established, we are now ready to put our restaurants on the board. Every player starts with 1 restaurant. You can build more restaurants later. You can also move your restaurant later if you don't like your starting location. But you will need to hire staff in order to do that, which is expensive, so you kind of want to make sure you get this right. Remember my tips for placing restaurants earlier, but the player who is last in the turn order track, in this case it's our Fried Geese and Donkey player, will get to put their restaurant down first, which means that if you have the misfortune of going last when the random turn order was established, you have the advantage of picking the best spot for your restaurant. So it's hard for me to determine at this stage of the game, even though I've played this game a whole bunch of times, to determine where the best spot is. Now let's just say our Fried Geese and Donkey player decides to play his restaurant here. This puts him in close proximity to 2 houses and gives him access to these other 2 by roads as well. Then it's time for Zango Blues Bar to place their restaurant. I guess they decide this is a pretty good spot. And finally, the Golden Duck Diner. And they decide they're going to corner this market over here because they feel like those other markets are saturated with restaurants. So players will hang on to their other 2 restaurants, which they can deploy later if they wish. Everyone is going to need a CEO card. This is you. This represents you in the company, running your company, and it is also the foundation of your company when you set it up in the company structure phase. So we'll give 1 to each of our players and put the rest away. And now we are ready to set the reserve. What does that mean? Well, this is where we determine how long the game is going to be, and it is going to be set by the players in secret. So let's get out the reserve cards. These are the reserve cards. There are 3 of them, and they are worth 100, 200, and 300 each. Now, these cards have 2 elements on them. You'll notice there is a amount of money in the middle, and then on the bottom here, there's what appears to be some kind of... If you look, it actually matches this track here on these management cards, which is also the same as the element here on this card. We'll explain more about what this means later, but it's essentially the amount of staff that can work for the management within your company. Now, you can start off by having you, the CEO, with 3 staff members working for you. Later on, when the reserve is revealed and this money is added to the bank, it's also going to change the amount of people that can work for you as a CEO. What each player is going to do is pick one of these secret reserve cards to put into the reserve, either $100, $200, or $300, and they're going to put their other 2 away, discarded in secret as well. Now, these cards are going to remain hidden without players knowing how much money has been put into the reserve for the duration of the game until the starting money in the bank is depleted. So you remember we set up this 150 earlier? Well, once this is completely exhausted, i.e. all the players have earned this 150, we will then reveal the reserve that was set up by the players at the start of the game. We'll count up the total in the middle of the cards. Here we've got $500, and we will create a new bank with that amount. So we can see here that we've got 2 100s and a 300. So this player who chose this card obviously wanted the game to go on longer. So they must have quite a long-term strategy. Whereas the other 2 players who picked these 2 $100 cards obviously want the game to be over quite quickly. So they've just put in the smallest amount possible. Now, it is a total of 500 that's added to the bank, but then we'll look and see what is the most common corporate structure on the bottom of the cards. We can see that the 100 corporate structure is the most popular. So what that means is that your CEO card is modified so that it now has this structure underneath. So instead of having 3 slots on the bottom here, it only has 2 now. You can put the reserve card underneath your CEO card to remind you of this if you wish. But this is really, really important to remember going forward. Now, the reserve cards, which are set at the beginning of the game, will remain hidden until the bank is exhausted. So nobody knows exactly how long the game will be until this money is earned by the players. Now that that's done, now that all of that is done, we're actually ready to start playing the game. So your company starts with nobody in it, no staff members, and just you. So I guess the first question you're going to ask me is, how do I get staff members and how does this work? Well, let's go through a turn and I'll explain how the staff work and how the turn structure works as well. So here on our handy food chain magnate menu, we've got the entire turn order, which consists of 7 rounds. We've got restructuring. Now this is when we build our company and decide which staff members are going to be in our company. Now this is going to get more difficult as the game progresses and we get more staff members. At the start of the game, it's really, really simple. The only people in the company are going to be you. Then we've got order of business. This is when the turn order changes. You see, the turn order can be altered, but it's not always most advisable to go first. So you might want to think about what is the most advantageous to you. Next up, we've got working. Now, this is when we enact all of the actions in player order based on who is in our company. So we're going to look here at the turn order track, and then players are going to take turns recruiting employees, training employees, initiating marketing campaigns, getting food and drinks or cooking food and drink, placing new houses and gardens. Yes, remember, we can build new houses to attract new people to the town to sell them stuff. Then we can place or move our restaurants if we are engaged in that. Next up is dinner time. Now, dinner time is an automated phase in which people emerge from their houses to buy food and drink. If we've done our marketing and our food and drink preparation correctly, they will come to our restaurant to eat. But if our opponents have undercut us by offering what the people want cheaper, then we might be in trouble. We've got payday. And in payday, we pay our staff their salaries. Then we've got marketing campaigns. This is where we resolve marketing and we put out demand tokens. Now, demand tokens are what determine what people want to eat. And so that's really important. Then finally, cleanup, which is just the admin phase of the round where we discard tokens and pick up our employee cards. And this is also where we remove any milestone cards that were awarded, which can no longer be earned. And then we're back to the top, restructuring. So with that in mind, let's have a look at the restructuring phase. At the start of the game, your company consists of one person, you. And your very first restructuring phase is going to go like this. I've got my company set up. It is me. And that's it. My company is now structured. Later on, I'm going to have a much bigger company. In fact, I'm going to have so many people they probably won't all fit in my company. So let's talk about a company structure. This little management symbol here on the bottom of the CEO card came up a little bit during the look at the reserve cards because they do modify this. But let's look at this in more detail. Remember that the black cards are management staff. Management staff are crucial to structuring your company. Now, you are always at the top of the company. You must always begin at the company pyramid. Now, everybody else will be placed within this pyramid. So, when you first reveal your company card on the first turn, it will just be you. But later on, people will be added to this in a pyramid format coming down. So you can have 3 people working for you unless this has been modified by the reserve card. Now, if these people are management, then management can have more people working for them. And based on their level of ability, they can have more or less people. For example, these management trainees who are entry-level management can each have 2 people working for them. So what you'll get is more people being laid out below like this. So here we have an example of a corporate structure with you at the top and then 6 employees. 2 management employees who don't have any further function beyond facilitating further cards. And then staff members down here, such as waitresses who bring in money, the kitchen trainee who can make and prepare food, and the marketing trainee who can begin ad campaigns. These are going to give us actions we can do in phase 3 of the game, working 9 to 5. Before we get to phase 3, we've got the order of business phase, which looks at open slots. Open slots are places where staff members could have been played, but have not been played. So this particular company here has 1 open slot, which is this 3rd staff member that could be working for you, the CEO. Now, whoever has the most open slots in their company can alter the turn order as they wish. So if you want to change your position in the turn order, you want to leave some open slots in your company, but it means that your company is going to be less effective this turn. So you want to think about that. Now, there may also be a number of staff members that you haven't put into your company because you don't have the management slots to do it, or you simply don't want to do what they can do this round. This means that they are on the beach. They're in a deck of staff that are just sitting around doing nothing. But the thing about having staff members on the beach is that if you've got anyone on the beach who requires a salary, you still have to pay it. So you're going to have to pay them regardless of whether you're using them or not. So you're going to have to think very carefully about who's going to be in the company and how you're going to get the most out of those staff members that you've taken the care to train up and that you're going to pay salaries to. And everyone's going to be going through their staff members available to them in this deck. Everybody's got this card, so that's pretty apparent that that's going to go into your company. You always have to be in your company. You have to be at the top of the pyramid. You cannot you cannot go to the beach. The CEO, which is you, must always be working. It's hard to run a business. So now that we're talking about corporate structure, something that's very important to note is that managers can only work for you. Managers cannot manage managers because we don't believe in middle management here in this company. We're all about direct communication and stuff like that, provided they talk to the managers who talk to us. Which means that we cannot have management trainees, for example, working for vice presidents or working for senior vice presidents. You can only have up to 3 managers working for you. Now, bear in mind that your management slots might decrease later based on the reserve, and you can only have 2 people working for you, which would be a bit of a nightmare. But they might also increase, and then you can have 4 people working for you. Oh my God. But the point is that no management working for management. That's too much. Too many slots. Now, out of the staff members who are available to you, you can decide who goes into the company and who goes onto the beach. The reason for putting people on the beach is that you may have more staff than you can have in the company, given the management structure. Remember, we're limited to the slots available on our management cards. So and it's likely you'll have more employees because you want to have some options available to you. You might not always want to have the pricing manager who reduces the costs of good to attract people to your restaurants, because you might think, I can make more money this turn. I don't need to undercut my competitors. You might not always want to have all the waitresses, and you might not always want to have your recruiting girls or your trainers, because you might not always want to be recruiting and training people for the company. You might need to make space for the marketers and the burger cook who's producing burgers. So you might send some people away to the beach. However, you must make sure that you do this process very carefully, because if you put people into your company and then you reveal your corporate structure, but if you messed up and you've got too many people and not enough management slots because you haven't been paying attention, then you are in trouble. Not this turn. Everybody goes to the beach. Everybody goes to the beach, and the only person in your company is you. You've basically wasted an entire turn. Now, this can be game losing, so make sure you pay attention to this phase of the game. Now, I touched briefly on phase 2, order of business, when I was talking about phase 1, restructuring. But the order of business is simply where all players count up their open slots within their company, that is, management slots with no staff members in them. Whoever has the most open slots can determine where they want to be on this turn order tracker. So in a 3-player game here, we have our turn order tracker with 3 slots. You don't use slots 4 and 5 in a 3-player game, obviously. Now, if whoever has the most open slots in their company can decide where they want to go. So for example, if it was Golden Duck Diner, they can choose position 1, 2, or 3. So if they don't want to move, they just say, I pick position 2. And if they want to go first, they go, I pick position 1. Then the player with the second most open slots in their company can pick from the remaining positions. So if that was Zango Blues Bar, he can decide whether or not he wants to go second or whether or not she wants to go third. So once that position has been locked in, there will of course be only one remaining position. This process continues until there's only one person left to choose, and that person must take the last position. The turn order is then established. If there is a tie, then whoever is in first position breaks the tie. So if Golden Duck Diner and Fried Geese and Donkey are tied for most open slots next turn, then Golden Duck Diner can choose which slot they want first. And with that, it's time to look at working 9 to 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a big sample company here, and I'm going to run down all the actions to me available in my company. But first, let's look at the basic action available on the CEO. So in the working 9 to 5 step, there are essentially 6 things that can happen. These are sort of the 6 actions that can be taken by the employees in your company, and these are really, really important. So the 6 things that you can do, and these are in a specific order, are recruit people. So the very first thing you do is recruit people. When you recruit new staff members, they're added to your staff who are on the beach. That is the staff that are not currently active in your corporate structure. The second step is train staff. Now this is when you take staff members who are in your company and put them back in the box in order to get the next level up. Very important, but bear in mind that once you start training, you're going to have to start paying salaries. So make sure that you have the money in order to cope, because running out of money and firing staff is not a viable business strategy. After we've trained staff, the next step is initiate marketing campaigns. Now, this is when our blue marketing staff members here are going to put out these marketing campaigns on the board in order to generate demand for food and drink. The fourth step is to actually create food and drink within our restaurants so that we have something to sell to the people when they come to buy it. The next step is to build houses and gardens, and that's our new business developer here. He does that. He builds new houses and builds gardens. Now bear in mind that these new people are going to have demand and they're going to want to go out to eat, but they could go to anyone's restaurant if those people have placed clever marketing campaigns. So we'll look at that in a minute. But the final step is to move or place new restaurants. So if you've got one of these red staff members here, the local manager or the regional manager, these guys move around your restaurants on the board, or they build new restaurants. Now this is a really brutal way to undercut your opponents. Just build a new restaurant closer to people's residences than they are and steal away that demand from them. So that's really important as well. So this is the very first person you'll have in your company. It's you. This is the only card you start with, and there's only one action on this card. It's a management card. Normally management only does one thing, which is to form the structure of your company in the restructuring step with people underneath it. But this card also has a secondary function. You are, of course, a talented person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in charge of this company. You can hire people. So if you are the only one in your company, the only step out of the 6 that you'll do in this round is hire a person, which means we take one card from an entry-level position here and add it to our company. And that can be a waitress, if we want to start earning money straight away and get one of those milestones. It could be a management trainee, which opens up more slots. Kind of useless at this stage. What we might want is a recruiting girl who hires more people. That's really important. Now, we can't hire anyone over here, so maybe we take a recruiting girl. That's hire one person. We put them into our selection of people on the beach. And that's the working 9 to 5 step for the first turn of the game. Next turn, we'll be able to start building our corporate structure. We can hire 2 people. And this will get much, much more involved as the game continues. Now, here I've set up a sample company. I've got a CEO with 3 management people and a whole bunch of people working for them. Now, what I've done is I've included an example of everybody in this company so you can see how everything works. However, you'd probably not see this in the actual game because you'd be focusing on sort of doing specific things in a turn. However, this company will do a bit of everything so you can see how it all functions. So we get to the working 9 to 5 step, and the very first thing we do is hire new people. Now, I can hire a person, and that's it. I haven't got any other hires in this company, but if I wanted, I could have a recruiting girl, I could have a recruiting manager, and note that the recruiting manager and the HR director have supplementary functions as well. So here I've got my HR director and recruiting manager. Now they let me hire a person or pay $5 less in salary at the end of the round. So that means that if I don't hire anyone, I get money off my salary, and that happens twice. And then the HR director just does it 4 times. Here in the 3-player game, we'd only have 1 copy of the HR director as well, so that's a highly desirable card. You could get $20 off salary, which is huge. But here in my company here, I've only got me, and I can hire a person if I want to. If I don't want to, I don't have to, and then I can just proceed. But let's say I hire a recruiting girl, because I seem to have a deficit of people that hire. In fact, that's the next step, training. And I've got a trainer here, and he can train 1 person. Now, typically, one person can only be trained 1 step per round. What that means is that if I'd hired 4 trainers, I could train 4 people 1 space, but I could not train 1 person 4 spaces. The coach and the guru are advanced trainers. So where my trainer can train 1 person 1 step, the coach has 2 training slots, which means that he can train 2 people 1 step or 1 person 2 steps. And the guru has the same thing but 3. So 3 people each 1 step, or the same person up to 3 steps. Note that there is no option here to do 1 person 2 steps and 1 person 1 step. It's either 3 people 1 step or 1 person 3 steps, up to 3 steps. So the guru, for example, could train my management trainee into a junior vice president, into a vice president, and into a senior vice president. In this case, I've only got 1 trainer though. So I've just hired a recruiting girl with my CEO. So let's say I decide I want to open up my options a bit, and with my CEO, I hire this management trainee. Now, what I can do is I can take my management trainee that I've just hired with my CEO and train them up to be something else. Let's say I train them up to be a junior vice president. So I've hired a person, I've trained them, and now I've got a junior vice president to help my company function later or to train up to something else. However, this person requires a salary, which I'm going to have to pay in the salaries phase, even though I've just hired them and they're on the beach. So the next step is to initiate marketing campaigns. Now I've got 2 marketing people here in my company. I've got a marketing trainee and a brand director. Now the marketing trainee lets me place a billboard for up to 2 turns, and the brand director says I can place a radio or lower for up to 5 turns. So here I've got my marketing trainee, and here I've got my brand director. Now, what does this mean, radio or lower? Well, there are, in fact, in order to the marketing campaign's effectiveness, billboards are the least effective form of marketing, because although they are big and we can put them right outside people's windows, they're also not very invasive. So maybe we want something that's a bit more personal or a bit more targeted. So the next step up is a mail campaign. So we'll put some letters in their mailbox, and then they'll be forced to look at them whether they want to or not, because it could be important, even though it's probably not. Next up is, of course, the airplane campaign. Yes, that's right. We're going to fly a plane past their houses with a banner on it that says, "Come to our restaurant, it's really good." Finally, the best and most effective form of communication here is the radio tower. And you'll notice that the numbers decrease as you get towards the most effective. Number 1 is radio, because it comes on the radio and there's no TV, which means people need to listen to the radio to find things that they want to learn about and stuff. The brand director is the most powerful of the marketing hires, and that's why there's a limited number of them. But he is also the only one that can put out a radio tower. The marketing trainee is the worst of the marketing people, which is why he can only do a billboard, and he has a lower max duration. Remember that if we get the first billboard placed milestone, we can actually do infinite campaigns. And infinite campaigns, we flip these tokens over to their infinity side. But if we don't have this, we can't do infinite campaigns. When we start a marketing campaign, we'll just take the marketer out of our company, and then we'll decide how long we want to do it and which billboard. So we'll take an available billboard from the pool of marketing stuff. So here's the pool of marketing stuff. I'll find a campaign that someone hasn't used yet. For example, billboard number 11. I'll take the associated number, and I'll take these over to the board. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a place to put this billboard on the board. The billboards are only effective with houses that they are touching. So if I want to advertise goods to number 7, then I must place this billboard touching number 7. So a big billboard is good if you want to hit 2 houses like this, because now I'm adjacent to 2 houses, but it also means that you're limited in the houses that you can advertise to, because some of them you just can't reach. Once you've placed down your billboard, you're going to determine how many you can put down your number here on your campaign manager to determine which campaign he's associated with. So my marketing trainee is running campaign number 11, which is this billboard. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide what it's advertising, and also how long that's going to last. So the max duration is 2. So if I want to advertise Coca-Cola for 2 rounds, I'm just going to take 2 Cokes and put them here. Now this indicates that it's advertising Coca-Cola and that the campaign is going to last for 2 rounds. Next up, I can do my brand director. Now he can place a mailbox, and the mailbox affects every house in the block. And what that means is a block is not separated by roads. So in this case, due to this board layout, this is a bit limited, but let's take a quick look. So on this board, the best place for the postal campaign is probably here, somewhere within this block. You see, this entire thing here is 1 block because it's unbroken by roads. This house has a tiny block here. This house also has a little block. This one, again, it's the only house within its block, so that's not very great. And this one's another block here. So if I put it down here, I'll be reaching house 8 and house 10, which is good, I suppose, if that's who I want to advertise to. But, you know, if I'm targeting someone else, I might just put it down here. The advantage of a postal campaign as well is I can put it here and affect this house, even though we're not adjacent. So if someone's put down billboards that block me from accessing this house, I can still get them with a postal campaign. It's worth noting as well, when we look at this conflict here, that campaigns are going to be triggered later on. So later on, when we get to phase 6 of the game, initiate marketing campaigns, this post office box is going to lose one of its Coca-Colas to signify that it's running its campaign for 1 turn, and then we're going to take a Coca-Cola and place it on every house affected by this marketing campaign. We'll do the same with this billboard, but you'll notice that what I've done is activate them in order, and that's very, very important, because if you want your products to reach the people before your opponent's products do, you need the most effective ad campaigns, and that means post, airplanes, radio. So your brand director is probably not going to be placing any post boxes. Now, if you need to reach an area that's more limited, you can use this airplane. Airplane campaigns hit everything in a straight line and are placed around the outside of the board. If I put this campaign here, for example, it's going to hit these 2 houses. If I put it here, it's going to hit all of these houses, which is really, really good. So airplane campaigns, also very effective. Finally, we've got the radio, which is the most effective form of advertising campaign. Now, the radio affects not only the tile it's on, but every tile adjacent. If I put the radio tower down here and I decide it's going to run for 2 turns of Coca-Cola, then it's going to advertise Coca-Cola to every one of these houses. And it's number 1, so it's going to trigger first, which is great. I'll put a 1 down here on my brand director to indicate that he's running the radio tower advertising campaign. These 2 members of staff of my company are now going to remain here in exile, running their campaigns until the campaigns have run out of duration. Remember, we set the duration earlier with these tokens. Once these tokens are exhausted, then they'll return to my company and they'll go into the beach section. But until such time as their campaign is complete, they will just sit here running their campaigns. Of course, if they have a salary on them, I will have to still pay that salary. So the next step of this phase is get food and drinks. Now here I look at my green cards, which are my light green is drinks and grass green here is food. And I can look at the people here in my company and see what they can produce. So here I've got the kitchen trainee who produces 1 burger or pizza. I've also got the errand boy who gets 1 drink of any type, and the cart operator who gets 2 drinks from each source on a route. Now we'll have a look at what that means in a minute. But with these two, I can just pick up the goods available in the game, so I can make a burger or a pizza or a Coke, beer, or a lemonade. Now what I want to be doing is looking at that demand we generate with our marketing campaigns to determine what I need to make in order to sell. It will be a lot more obvious what you want to make once you've seen what marketing campaigns are on the board and what demand is left on the board. So really what you should be keeping an eye on is the marketing campaigns. This is an example of where it might be beneficial to you to go last, because if you go first, you won't have seen what ad campaigns people might be placing on the board. But if you go last, you can see what they already put down. But if you go last, you're also the last to pick the ad campaigns. So there's a strategic depth to everything, and all the decisions are hard to make. Geez. Anyway, I can take one of anything to add to these two guys, and that will be my supply. Now, these guys will be serving every restaurant on the board, so if I have more than one restaurant, I don't have to assign these to a specific restaurant. I just put them down here on the cards and satisfy customers as necessary. Next up, we've got the cart operator. He gets 2 drinks from each source on a route, and he has a range of 2. That's what this indicates up here. So let's have a look at what that means. So the cart operator starts from a restaurant and has a range of 2. Now, 2 means squares within the player board here. So if I'm running fried geese and donkey, then my range of 2 can take me out of the entrance of my restaurant here, and then I can run 2 spaces down here, or 2 spaces up here, and I run along roads. I could run down here, for example, and as I run my route, I have to trace a path with my finger along the road, and every drinks venue I pass along that route, I can collect 1 of. So in this case, I'm actually not in a very good position because I can really only get 1 Coca-Cola by going this way, or 1 beer by going down here, or by going along here. If I had a better range, for example, if I was a truck driver with range 3, then I could go down here, 1, 2, 3, and get 2 beers instead of just 1. But if I'm just the lowly cart operator with a range of 2, then I can only get 1 beer or 1 Coca-Cola. The Zeppelin pilot has a range of 4, and he ignores roads, but there's a limit. Next up, we've got the new business developer. Now, the new business developer is really, really important because he places new houses. Now, I've seen games run entirely without playing this card at all, and I've seen games that use it to great effect, and games that also use it and then it completely backfires against the player that played it. So you must be very careful about this card, but when you play the new business developer, you can do one of 2 things. You can either put down a new house, or you can put down a garden. You'll notice that the houses here on our board don't have any gardens, and that means that they can only hold a maximum of 3 demand. If someone is saturating this area with Coca-Cola advertisements, and we've got demand here on this house here. Now, note that this comes out during the marketing campaigns phase, which is phase 6 of the turn, so more on how this happens later. We can put down a garden here. Now, a garden means 2 things happen. Essentially, 1, the house has a capacity for 5 demand instead of 3. This will make more sense when we get to the marketing campaign step, but that means that they can hold more demand and they'll buy more food and stuff, I guess, because the house is bigger. The other thing that happens with a house that has a garden is they'll wind up paying twice as much in a restaurant. I guess because they're wealthier people, they'll go to fancier restaurants, or you can sell them fancier stuff within your restaurant. Instead of the burger, they buy the gourmet burger. Or instead of the beer, they buy the hipster craft beer. But the point is that they'll spend twice as much money. So it's really valuable to capture the demand in these houses. This guy can also build new houses. New houses always come with a garden. So you don't have to build a garden when you build a new house. Now, one of the key things to note is this number here. When we get to the dinner time phase, which is phase 4, that's when the people are going to emerge from the houses and buy food and drink based on the demand on the house. And they'll be activated in the order of this number, which is really crucial to think about when you're thinking about what you're going to make and where you're going to put it. So if I've got my kitchen trainee or whatever here, Or if I'm trying to decide whether to put errand boys or kitchen trainees in my company, what I should be looking at is the order in which the houses are going to activate, how far they are away from my restaurants, and how much demand and what it's for. Our new business developer can place this house anywhere on the board, so he's going to be wanting to place it somewhere near his restaurant. For example, if our business developer here is part of Golden Duck Diner, he definitely wants this house to go down here, where nobody else can access it. And it will enhance the potential revenue of this place here. You can also put it down like that. Note that when you place a house down like this, it is now adjacent to both this road and this road. So putting it down here is not a good idea for Golden Duck Diner because he's giving access to the house to the other two restaurants as well via the road here. He'd be much better off putting it down here or putting it here like this. So that's the new business developer. He builds houses and gardens, which creates more demand and more revenue. And you can sort of put these places down tactically to enhance your business and your demand while denying it to your opponents. But of course, then they can create more ad campaigns, and so the great circle continues. Speaking of which, let's continue the great circle to our last chap here, the local manager. Well, the local manager can put down a new restaurant on its coming soon side. He also, while he's in our structure, we have a drive-in available. And what the drive-in means is that we can essentially ignore the entrance on our restaurant. When we get to the dinner time phase of the game, we're going to be basically counting the distance from houses to the entrance of our restaurant. And that's going to be important for determining how far people have to go to get the food they want. This is especially important for breaking ties if two restaurants are offering the same food that the people want. If we have a drive-in available, it means we no longer have to count the distance to the entrance. We can just count the distance to the restaurant, which is important. Now, when we place a new restaurant with this chap, we're going to put it down on its coming soon side. We can flip it over to the ready side in the cleanup during phase 7. So that means this turn, the restaurant won't affect the game. However, if you have a regional manager, the restaurant opens immediately. And what that means is you can put down a restaurant somewhere and immediately compete with the other restaurants. Thus, you could steal away business from them this very turn, catching them off guard. And with that, it's time to move on to phase 4, dinner time. However, dinner time doesn't really make sense until we look at how demand is calculated from advertising campaigns. Essentially, what's going to happen is our ads are going to create demand, then we're going to create food, then people are going to come out from their houses and buy the food, right? First, we have to create the demand, which happens in phase 6, the marketing campaign phase. So let's look at phase 6 first, and then we'll come back to phase 4. You'll note that we're skipping over phase 5, payday, but that's actually a very simple phase in which we just pay money to people. So phase 7, the cleanup step, is also very simple. So these are the two main phases we need to look at in order to fully understand this game. We'll start with phase 6, the marketing campaign phase. Now you'll notice here I've got out my piles of goods. Now I'm going to be putting these out to create demand. We've got pizza, burgers, lemonade, beer, and cola. And we've got a bunch of marketing campaigns here on the board as well. Now the marketing campaigns are going to be activated in the order of the numbers on them. We start with number 1 here, which is this radio campaign. Now if you remember from my earlier explanation, the radio campaign affects every house on this tile plus every house on an adjacent tile. So we'll take away 1 lemonade to indicate that this campaign has run from 1 turn. Then we'll put a lemonade down on every affected house. There we go. Every house on an adjacent tile. Next up, we've got this airplane campaign here, which is number 6. Now this plane is going to fly across the board and drop a pizza off on every house that it hits. So that's just these two here. Hopefully the Golden Duck Diner has created some pizza. Now this plane is on that campaign, so we get rid of a pizza. And next up, we're on to this postal campaign here, number 7, which is just going to hit house number 13. So they've got demand for a cola. Now we're on to this postal campaign here, number 9, which is going to generate burgers for everyone in the block, which is going to be house 8 and 10 here. So they want a pizza, a burger, and a lemonade. Now, next up, we've got this billboard here. It's going to generate demand for a burger there. Finally, this one here, campaign number 14, generates a beer here in that house. And now we're done. That's all our marketing campaigns resolved. There's a few things to note. These houses are going to come out for dinner time and they're going to be demanding the goods that are on the house. However, they're only going to go to a restaurant that serves everything that they offer. And if they don't have everything they want, they're going to have a pout and then go nowhere. So house 8 and 10, for example, want a burger, a pizza, and a lemonade. Now, if your company offers burgers and lemonade but doesn't have pizzas, they will not come to you at all for anything. So if the Golden Duck Diner has not made all three of those goods, then they are in trouble. So they're going to have to look at the board, look at the marketing campaigns, and anticipate the demands of these customers. A great way to get a leg up on your opponents in this game is to generate demand in the houses they're trying to serve for goods that they can't or aren't thinking about producing, or that are less profitable for them to produce. If Golden Duck Diner cannot serve these two houses, they won't go out during the dinner time phase, which means that next turn, when this radio campaign triggers, we'll just remove a lemonade. We'll put down lemonades here and here on 12 and 4, but we won't add anything to these two houses because they can't take any further demand. 3 demand is the maximum for houses of that type. Now, if Golden Duck Diner builds a garden down here, then we can start adding more stuff to them. They'll get another lemonade from the radio, they'll get a pizza from the airplane, etc. because demand increases to 5. So actually they'd get a pizza from the airplane, but then they wouldn't get a burger from the Postal Campaign because they are now saturated again with 5 demand. So managing these marketing campaigns is hugely important because you can create demand for the goods that you're selling. You can sell them at a high price, but you can also pip your opponents at the post by preventing them from getting the demand for the goods that they're trying to sell. So now that we understand how demand is generated, let's have a look at the dinner time phase, which is when these people are going to come out of their houses and actually purchase these goods. The dinner time phase is actually a sort of a semi-automated phase because we don't actually do anything or make any decisions in this phase. We just kind of watch what happens and either enjoy the rewards for a well-done marketing campaign and well-done advertising and pricing campaign, or we get in trouble because people have created demand for goods we can't sell and have undercut us on prices and get sad. So the houses are activated in the order of the numbers on them. I'll explain later on why the order in which the houses activate can be crucially important and can really get you in trouble with your business. However, before I get there, let's just explain how these people determine where they're going to go to eat and what might influence them. As I mentioned during the marketing campaign explanation, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to look for restaurants that serve what they want. For example, here in House 13, we want a beer and a cola. They're going to look for someone who's made beer and cola. If you don't have beer and cola for sale, they will just ignore you. If nobody has beer and cola for sale, they won't go out at all. If you have what they want and nobody else does, they'll come to you. Now, note that here, for example, Golden Duck Diner might have all the beer and cola in the world, but House 13 is not going to go there because they can't get there. There are no connecting roads. Golden Duck Diner would have to open a restaurant on this section of the board, and now House 13 can go visit them and purchase all the beer and cola in the world. But without that restaurant, there's nothing Golden Duck Diner can do. So let's assume here that Fried Geese and Donkey and Zango Blues Bar are both offering beer and cola. So House 13 has got to choose which one's it going to go to. Well, the way it calculates it is by the price of the good and the distance from the restaurant. So the very first thing that we use to determine which restaurant house number 13 is going to visit is by the unit price. Now, the unit price for everything is 10 by standard. So you'll pay $10 for a burger, $10 for a pizza, $10 for a lemonade. All things cost $10. So in this case, house number 13 is looking at spending $20 for a cola and a beer. However, you can undercut prices with the pricing manager. You can also undercut prices by $3 with the discount manager. If you hire 2 discount managers, you'll go down to $4 per unit, seriously undercutting your opponents. But that's not all. So once we establish a unit price, now let's say, for example, Fried Geese and Donkey have the goods that house number 13 want, and Zango Blues Bar also have the goods that house number 13 wants, a beer and a cola. They're going to be looking at unit price. Let's say, in the purpose of this example, Zango Blues Bar has built a discount manager which knocks 3 off the unit price. Now, the unit price at Zango Blues Bar is $7 instead of $10, but at Fried Geese and Donkey, it's still a full $10. Note that even though House 13 wants 2 units, we only take into account the unit price. We don't take into account the volume of stuff they want. So they could want 5 things. We would still only be looking at the individual unit price per item. So Zango Blues Bar 7, fried geese and donkey 10. Now, we also need to take into account the range. That's the distance from the house to the restaurant, because they'll pay a bit more if they have to walk less far or drive less far. The range from house 13 to fried geese and donkey here is 1, because we cross 1 tile border. That's this border here. So 1 here. Now, the distance from 13 to Zango Blues Bar is 2, because we either go this way, we go 1, 2, or we go 1, 2. And then we reach the entrance to the restaurant. And that's why the placement of these restaurant entrances at the start of the game is important, because it could reduce your range to the houses. So we take the distance, which is 1 and 2, and add them to the unit price. So Zango Blues Bar is running at 7, plus 2 is 9, and Fried Geese and Donkey is running at 10, plus 1 is 11. 9 is less than 11, which means that House 13 is going to go to the Zango Blues Bar. Now, it's worth noting that if you've calculated your demand and range and it's still a draw, like Fried Geese and Donkey, Zango Blues Bar, we've counted up range, we've counted up discounts, they're both offering 10. How do we break the tie? The tie is broken by waitresses. So if you have more waitresses than the other person, the people are going to come to you because they're going to get better service faster. If you're tied for waitresses as well, let's say neither of them have any waitresses. So then the tie is broken by turn order. More often than not, it will be broken by discounts and range or waitresses. So Zango Blues Bar must have the goods available, which is a beer here and a Coca-Cola. We'll take away the demand from the house because they got what they wanted. And Zango Blues Bar will earn money equal to the unit price. So in this case, 2 units at $7 a piece is $14. It's worth noting that if they had the first drink marketed Milestone, that's $5 extra per drink. They would get an additional $10 on top of that $14, giving them $24. However, this $5 bonus is not incorporated into the unit price when working out where this house is going to go. Now, if that seems complicated, it kind of is a bit complicated, but don't worry. Once you've played like a round, you'll immediately get it. You'll be like, okay, so basically I'm this distance away, they're that distance away, they're going to go there by default unless I undercut their prices, or move my restaurant closer, or build another restaurant. Now also note that because House 13 actually has a garden, they're going to pay double unit price. So in this case, if Zango Blues Bar had this milestone, and they sold 2 goods at $7 a unit, then House 13 would wind up paying a grand total of $38 at Zango Blues Bar for these 2 drinks. $7 per unit, doubled because of the garden, so that's $14 a piece, that's $28 for the 2 drinks, plus $10 bonus for the first drink marketed Milestone. And that money would be taken from the bank and given to the Zango Blues Bar player. The house would be resolved, and then we'd move on to house number 14. Remember that the houses are done in numerical order. Players can manipulate that order in order to make sure that you don't have the goods you want for the really profitable houses. For example, let's say house 13 wants 3 lemonades, and they have a garden. We know they're going to be paying double unit price for each of those lemonades. This is a really profitable house. Now, if Fried Geese and Donkey want to be the one to sell 13 lemonades, they're going to make sure that they don't sell the lemonades to house number 4 here, who doesn't have a garden. Now, if you want to make sure you don't sell to house number 4, what do? Well, you work out what your opponent's going to do and then try to not undercut them, or you could use your luxury manager to ratchet up the cost of your unit price. This luxury manager increases unit price by $10. Holy cow. What that means is, for example, if we know that Zango Blues Bar is going to pay their discount manager to knock 3 off the unit price, and they've got 3 lemonades available to sell, then we can make sure that they're going to sell 2 lemonades to house number 4 for $7 a piece, and then they're only going to have 1 lemonade left. House number 13 is not going to bother going there because we've got 3 lemonades available here at Fried Geese and Donkey. Even though we're charging $20 a lemonade instead of $7 a lemonade, we can still serve them because we have what they want, and Blues Bar doesn't have it because they sold them to House 4 already for less. And that's the kind of ruthless economy you're going to find in Food Chain Magnate, so you've got to be ready for it. The very last thing we're going to do in the dinner time phase is get money for waitresses. So for every waitress in your corporate structure, at the end of the dinner time phase, you'll get $3 as well, because waitresses don't get to keep their tips. That's for the company. I don't really believe that. Anyway, so everybody gets money for waitresses. If you've got the milestone, you get $5 instead of $3. So count up your waitresses and get some money there. And then after that's done, we're ready to move on to payday. Phase 5, now this is where we pay the salaries. Remember I pointed out the salary icon on each staff member? That's this staff member here. For example, there is the salary right there. That's $5 for him on payday. Remember, we can affect the salary we have to put out, for example, by having recruiting managers and then not using them to recruit. We can also affect the salary with this first to train someone milestone, which knocks down the total salary by $15 as well. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to count up everybody in our active business structure who's got a salary that needs to be paid, as well as everybody on the beach who has a salary that needs to be paid. We're going to count up all those salary icons, multiply it by 5, and that's how many dollars we're going to have to pay to these people. And that's pretty much how payday works. That money just goes straight back to the bank and makes you very sad. Now, we've already covered Phase 6, marketing campaigns, so we'll skip straight into Phase 7, cleanup. In Phase 7 cleanup, we will discard any unsold food and drink that we produced in our company that we didn't sell, either because someone pipped us at the post or because the demand wasn't right. Whatever happened, we'll take that away. We'll also collect up our corporate structure here, and everybody will go back to the beach, ready to be distributed in the next restructure phase. Note that any marketing people who are still involved in running marketing campaigns, and the CEO doesn't need to go to the beach because they're always going to be in the company. And finally, any of the milestone pods that have been achieved this round will be taken away as well, because those are no longer available to players. Now, you'll remember that we set up a reserve deck earlier on. The minute someone reaches for money from the bank and there's no money left in the bank, this reserve is broken open and the bank is replenished. When the reserve money is completely exhausted, that signifies the beginning of the last turn of the game. The turn is completed, and any money that would be earned, but is no longer available in the reserve because all of that is gone, is taken directly from this pile here of remaining cash. So don't worry, on the last turn of the game, if you still ought to be earning money, but you can't because it's all gone, you can still get the money out of the pile here. Also note that on the last turn of the game, the turn ends with dinner time. So you'll skip payday, marketing, and cleanup on the last turn of the game because you don't make any profit in those rounds. So the game will always end in the dinner time phase. So you complete that dinner time phase, and then any additional earnings that would be made from waitresses and from sales are given to the companies. And then that's the end of the game. Every player counts up who has the most money, and the person with the most money is the winner. Much like most of the other elements of the game, if you are tied for money at the end of the game, then the turn order track is the tiebreaker. And that's Food Chain Magnate. Now, I hope you felt like this has been helpful and taught you everything you need to know about playing the game. But if you still feel a bit confused and you're a bit like, well, I understand how all this works, but I really need to see it in action, then I will be playing tomorrow with Michael and Ollie. We're going to be playing with a house variant rule as well, which is quite exciting. So I hope that you'll come back and join us for Fast Food Chain Magnate tomorrow, and thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye!